Conformity is defined as a change in belief or behavior in individuals or groups as a result of real or imagined group pressure. So one thing is there has to be a group present, or that could just be one other person, because a group can technically be, and we'll talk about this later, 2 or more individuals. So you have to feel pressure from at least one other person. And it doesn't even have to be real pressure. They don't have to be holding a gun to you, or they don't have to be chanting, do it, do it. You just have to feel like there's pressure. It can just be this uncomfortable feeling of if I don't do this, I'm going to be ostracized, or I'm going to be teased. So there are a couple of different kinds of conformity. One kind is called compliance, and that just means you're complying with something. You're complying with the rules. You're going along with what people tell you to do. So compliance is outwardly going along with whatever norms you feel are being pressured on you, but inwardly you're disagreeing. So you're not happy to be doing what you're doing. So there's some dissonance there. You're doing something that you don't want to be doing. You're going along with it. You're complying. Obedience is a special kind of conformity in that it's compliance with a direct demand, and usually that's from an authority figure. Sometimes it can be from a peer, but that peer has to be very charismatic or very manipulative or something else, threatening maybe. So obedience is compliance. That means you're going along with it, but you don't really necessarily want to. You're obeying what someone is telling you to do. They're commanding you to do something that you don't necessarily want to do, which is why it's compliance. And you are still disagreeing inwardly. You don't want to go along with it. Usually it's to an authority figure. And then acceptance is another kind of conformity. It's kind of an interesting kind of conformity. You don't necessarily feel like you're conforming, because in acceptance you basically accept what's happening, whatever the norm is in that situation, and you believe in what is going on with the group, and you act accordingly. So you're not really feeling pressure so much as you are saying, I wonder what I'm supposed to do in this situation. Oh, everybody else is, going this direction, or everybody else is wearing a blue hat. I better do the same thing. And it's not like you're secretly saying, oh, darn, I really want to go the other direction, or wow, I really, really, really want to wear a red hat, but I'm going to go ahead and go do what everybody else is doing. Rather, you're just sort of like, I guess that's what I should be doing. So that's acceptance. It's a lot longer term type of behavior. Next time you come across that situation, you'll probably wear the red hat, or was it the blue hat? I can't remember. You'll wear the hat that everybody else is wearing without even thinking about it, because you will have internalized it, and people won't have to convince you at all. Whereas compliance, usually they'll have to re-pressure you every time because you don't want to do it. I have a little slide here with a link that I hope is still open that talks about the importance of norms, and it's if it's still live, then it will be talks about virtual reality or video games, and how even in video games we have the personal space norm that we have in our country. We don't want to stand too close to each other because it's awkward, and that's true of the characters in video games online, the MMORPGs and whatnot. So a couple of studies that you guys should be aware of. I'm looking at the 4th slide now. Sharif's study of norm formation. He was really interested in seeing how do people get a norm going. I mean, I'm always fascinated by this. I go to the mall, and I haven't been to the mall in forever. I'm like, what is up with these shoes? Why are these shoes so freaking high? Why are these heels so ridiculously, impairingly high? And what is up with these, outfits, and why are boys' pants falling down, and why are girls' skirts like so short? And I don't know how this gets out there, but somehow somebody somewhere starts a norm, and it starts to look normal, and that's what feels natural, and that's what feels like it's supposed to be that way. And if you don't dress that way, for example, then you feel out of place, especially if you're in a particular demographic or you're in a particular age group. And I think that's really where the generational gaps come in. People are saying, oh, you listen to this music, what's wrong with you? But that's what's popular. And for somehow, how do these norms start? How do people suddenly start liking a certain kind of music and liking a certain kind of fashion? Anyway, when I asked you to break a social norm, I was trying to get you to notice how natural some of these things seem, even though they aren't necessarily rational or even helpful. I like the idea of the gym, but why not live on a farm and actually work for real But we don't have time for that, so instead we have to build a building and go work at this place for, to work out, to get our exercise in an artificial environment. All right. So Sharif was one of the, you don't have to remember his name, although I will refer to it as Sharif's autokinetic study, so make sure that you do understand what that means. Sharif's interest was, how do these norms get started? And he started with something very simple. He actually took advantage of a perceptual tendency that people have to have, it's actually, it's an illusion. When you have a point of light and you stare at it in the dark for a long time, it starts to move just a little bit, and then eventually it starts moving more and more and more until it zips away and it disappears. It's just something that happens to our eyes. I don't know why that happens, but he took advantage of this, and he asked people how far did they think it moved. Did it move like the backwards on this? Did it move like this far? Did it move this far? How many inches was it? Was it 3 inches? Was it 5 inches? 8 inches? How far was this little dot moving back and forth before it zipped away? And so they just basically used this trick to get people to sort of, make their own personal decisions about what they thought. And then later they got people in groups and they shared their responses, and they found that people would come together and start to agree with a kind of an average. If some person said they thought it was 8 inches that it was moving, another person thought it was 2 inches, they might end up agreeing on something like 4 or 5 inches, because they sort of realized that I'm not perfect in my perception of this dot, and I don't really know what's real. I'm not really sure if it's right, and it's not something that's super important to me anyway. It's not like a real heartfelt attitude that I hold. So I'm willing to be open and sort of go, maybe that is right, maybe that makes sense. So they'd get people individually to give an answer, and then they would get people in groups, and they would tend to agree with each other. They would move towards consensus. What they would do also is they'd have individuals make their decisions about how far the dot was moving, and then they would have them get into the group, and they'd have a confederate, who is someone who works, I don't know, it's a bad name, but it's just someone who works with the experimenter as a plant, and they're usually someone who's pretending to be another participant. In this case, this other participant would give some crazy outlandish guess, like 8 inches, and there's nobody thought that this thing was moving very far. So someone would say that, and people would tend to bring that person back down to the average. So the idea was, how do norms get started? Well, when people are uncertain about something, like fashion, or like music maybe, or some of it just seems like it's objectively verifiable, but in other cases, in a lot of cases, it's sort of what people like and what they don't like. And in this case, people didn't really care how far this dot was going, so they were very open to the suggestion of other people, and they tend to come to an agreement very quickly, and they would therefore form a norm. They would therefore come to decide, we all view that this is approximately what was really going on with this dot. Not so exciting, but a very interesting start to looking at conformity and how people start to agree on these things. Now, the important thing to remember about this study is that this shows acceptance. If everybody else thinks that, then I'll go along with it. So that's the idea there, is that it's actually